Disbarred attorney and former Real Housewives husband Tom Girardi sentenced to 7 years in prison today on fraud charges. Remember, Girardi is convicted of stealing millions of dollars from former clients, including relatives of the victims in the 2018 Lion Air crash. He'll also have to pay more than $2 million in restitution to the people he stole from.
Tom Girardi, a name once spoken with admiration in courtrooms across California. He was the lawyer who stood beside Erin Brockovich, the man who claimed to fight for the powerless against corporations too big to care. To the outside world, he was a hero, a champion of justice, but behind the glossy reputation was something far darker.
Disgraced attorney Tom Girardi, the estranged husband of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Erika Jayne, is headed to prison. A judge sentenced the 86-year-old disbarred lawyer to 7 years behind bars for leading a years-long fraud.
Today, Tom Girardi is no longer remembered as a fearless trial attorney. He is remembered as a convicted fraudster, a man who stole from the very clients he swore to protect. This is the story of how one of America's most celebrated lawyers went from courtroom giant to disgraced criminal, from stolen settlement funds to the collapse of his law firm, from federal indictments to disbarment, and the devastating human toll his greed created. This is not just a fall from grace. This is the shameful case of Tom Girardi.
Lawyer. I was in the 6th grade. At 7 o'clock at night on Saturdays, Perry Mason. He was on from 7 to 7:30, and I watched that show for 2 decades. And I thought, man, to ever be like Perry would really be great. And I never wanted to be anything else from the 6th grade on. I tell you, I had the greatest lesson of how to be a lawyer from my mother.
In the small world of high-stakes plaintiff's law, he was larger than life. He built his reputation on impossible cases that pitted ordinary people against powerful corporations. Came in the 1990s, the case of Erin Brockovich versus Pacific Gas and Electric. Girardi and his team secured a massive settlement for residents of Hinckley, California, whose groundwater had been poisoned. Hollywood immortalized the case in the Oscar-winning film Erin Brockovich, and Tom Girardi became a household name. That case transformed him into the people's lawyer. Newspapers called him a legal legend. Talk shows booked him as the man who could take down billion-dollar companies. And Girardi knew how to play the part. He wore sharp suits, drove expensive cars, and built a powerful Los Angeles law firm, Girardi Keese. Clients flocked to him. Politicians and judges courted his friendship. Celebrities invited him into their inner circles. To most people, he was untouchable, the man you could trust when your life had been shattered by accident, malpractice, or tragedy. But that image, that carefully crafted persona, was also the perfect disguise. The higher the pedestal, the fewer the questions. And Girardi used that trust as both shield and weapon. The cracks in Girardi's empire appeared quietly. At first, just whispers. A client waiting a little too long for a settlement check. A vendor complaining about unpaid bills. A lawsuit from a contractor who never received payment. Most people brushed it off. After all, this was Tom Girardi, the lawyer who had brought PG&E to its knees. Surely, he was good for it. But the complaints kept coming. Reporters uncovered stories of clients who waited months, even years, for money that had already been awarded to them. Court filings revealed unpaid debts piling up. Behind closed doors, accountants raised alarms about strange transfers and mismatched ledgers. For any law firm, client trust accounts are sacred. The rules are simple. Settlement funds must be safeguarded and delivered quickly. But at Girardi Keese, delays became routine. When desperate clients called, they were told, just wait a little longer, the money's coming. It wasn't coming. Girardi was already siphoning off client funds, using them to cover firm expenses, pay off debts, and finance his luxurious lifestyle. Instead of stopping the bleeding, he doubled down. He lied to clients. He juggled money from one settlement to pay another. It was a shell game, and for years, nobody dared to question it.
Disgraced attorney Thomas Girardi's office is being auctioned off to pay creditors after filing for bankruptcy. Among the items is a framed receipt from PG&E's $236 million payout over the Hinckley water lawsuit. There's also a Lakers championship ring and lots of LA sports memorabilia. Girardi is being sued over claims he represented victims of the 2018 Indonesian plane crash, but allegedly stole money from the settlement. He has since been disbarred.
By 2020, the scheme could no longer hold. Girardi Keese, once a powerhouse in Los Angeles, was drowning in debt. The breaking point came when the firm filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The filing was devastating, a public admission that the empire was insolvent. Creditors swarmed, former employees were left jobless and unpaid. And worst of all, victims who had trusted Girardi with life-changing settlements discovered their money was gone. The bankruptcy court appointed a trustee to untangle the wreckage. What they found was staggering. Drained trust accounts, millions missing, and financial records that told a story of systematic looting. Girardi's empire hadn't simply collapsed. It had been hollow for years, propped up by lies and stolen funds. The golden lawyer was now exposed as a fraud. Behind every stolen dollar was a victim, and their stories revealed the true cost of Girardi's betrayal. Burn victims who needed lifelong medical care discovered their settlements had vanished. Doctors went unpaid. Surgeries were delayed. Some patients suffered irreparable harm. Families of plane crash victims who had turned to Girardi after unimaginable loss were promised compensation that never arrived. They were left grieving without the resources to rebuild their lives. Even everyday accident survivors, people awarded modest sums to cover hospital bills or lost wages, waited endlessly for checks that never came. These weren't just financial losses, they were human tragedies. Families went bankrupt, children's futures were derailed, some victims died waiting for money that Girardi had already stolen. Tom Girardi didn't just steal money, he stole dignity, security, and hope from the very people who trusted him most.
Our federal prosecutors are speaking about high-profile attorney Tom Girardi, who was convicted of 4 counts of wire fraud and for running a massive 10-year Ponzi scheme. Let's listen in.
Girardi portrayed himself as a champion for the little guy. He marketed himself as a lawyer for Aaron Brockovich. He cultivated an image of a lawyer who fought against corporate greed and even claimed to be himself a champion of justice. He even had a radio show by that name. But Mr. Girardi was no champion of justice.
For years, Girardi deflected. He claimed it was just business delays, that the money was tied up in the system, that critics were exaggerating. But by 2023, federal prosecutors unveiled the truth. A sweeping indictment charged him with multiple counts of wire fraud, each tied to client settlement funds that had been misappropriated. In court, prosecutors laid out the scheme with brutal clarity. Jurors saw bank statements proving client funds had been rerouted into Girardi's accounts. They saw invoices for private jets, club memberships, even cosmetic procedures, all paid with stolen money. Former employees testified about falsified ledgers, lies told to clients, and a culture of silence within the firm. The defense argued Girardi was too old, too confused, too out of touch to know what was happening. But the evidence showed intent. This wasn't incompetence, it was calculated theft. The jury convicted him on multiple counts, and when sentencing came, the court made it clear this was no victimless white-collar crime. Girardi had preyed on the vulnerable. His punishment would be severe. The once celebrated lawyer was now a felon.
Disgraced former attorney Tom Girardi has been sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in federal prison for stealing millions of dollars from injured clients in a Ponzi scheme. Girardi has been ordered to report to prison on July 17th and pay over $2.3 million in restitution and fines. Girardi's attorney wanted him to remain at a medical care facility for the rest of his life due to age-related dementia, but the judge denied that request. Today also happens to be Girardi's 86th birthday.
No empire like this runs alone. Girardi had help. Several insiders, accountants, firm officers, and even attorneys eventually admitted their role. They had shuffled money between accounts, falsified documents, and crafted excuses to keep clients at bay. The fraud worked like a pyramid. New settlement money was used to plug the gaps left by older stolen funds. It was a constant cycle of deception. Some insiders pleaded guilty, acknowledging their part in the cover-up. Their testimony revealed the ugly truth. Girardi Keese wasn't mismanaged. It was a criminal enterprise, sustained by a culture of loyalty, fear, and willful blindness. The criminal conviction was only one chapter. The bankruptcy trustee launched a war of clawbacks, lawsuits designed to recover stolen money from anyone who had received it. That meant former partners, business associates, luxury vendors, even politicians. If you had been paid with Girardi's stolen funds, the trustee wanted it back. The lawsuits uncovered shocking details: hundreds of thousands spent on private jets, mortgages on a Pasadena mansion covered with client money, extravagant parties funded by settlements meant for widows and accident victims. Every lawsuit painted the same picture: a man who lived like royalty while his clients suffered. Girardi's lifestyle told the story best. While clients begged for their checks, he was hosting dinner parties at his mansion. While burn victims struggled to pay for treatment, he was buying jewelry, designer suits, and tickets to luxury vacations. The contrast was obscene. Survivors of accidents were rationing medication while Girardi sipped champagne. Widows were facing foreclosure while he threw lavish parties for Hollywood's elite. Forensic accountants traced every dollar. What they found was deliberate, a pattern of transfers designed to disguise theft. Girardi wasn't careless. He was systematic. Eventually, the California State Bar acted. For years, critics had accused the bar of protecting Girardi. Complaints had piled up, but action was slow. Now, with federal charges and a criminal conviction, there was no choice. Girardi was disbarred. It was the professional death penalty. The man once admired as California's most powerful trial lawyer could never again practice law. His reputation was destroyed, his license revoked, his legacy erased. The disbarment wasn't just symbolic, it was a public acknowledgement that the system had failed for decades. Because this story isn't only about Tom Girardi, it's about how he got away with it for so long. Banks failed to raise alarms about suspicious transfers. Regulators ignored warning signs, judges overlooked complaints. And most damning of all, the California State Bar admitted it had mishandled multiple grievances against him. Prestige had blinded the system. Girardi's fame and connections shielded him from scrutiny. The very institutions meant to protect clients instead enabled abuse. It was a systemic failure, and victims paid the price. Even now, the story isn't over. The bankruptcy trustee continues to claw back funds. Some settlements have been reached, but the money recovered is only a fraction of what was lost. Many victims will never see the full compensation they were owed. The human cost lingers. Families still face medical debt. Some survivors have died waiting. Others live with scars, financial, physical, and emotional, that will never fully heal. Tom Girardi sits disgraced, but for his victims, the fight continues. Tom Girardi's story is not a misunderstanding. It is not bad bookkeeping. It is theft, deliberate, cruel, and devastating. He betrayed the most vulnerable people who trusted him. He weaponized his law license for greed. The lesson is clear. Prestige means nothing if it hides corruption. And the system must change. Stricter oversight of client trust accounts. Transparent reporting systems regulators cannot ignore. Accountability for bar associations that protect powerful lawyers instead of protecting the public. The Girardi scandal is one of the darkest chapters in American legal history. But if change follows, it can also be a turning point. A reminder that no lawyer, no matter how famous, is above the rules. Because justice without accountability isn't justice at all.